Right, so I've torn up some pattern that I got from a junk shop, and I am literally going to decoupage it onto my gesso pages like so. And I'm using some of my matte finish for this because it's quite thin as a product and it's good enough to go through the tissue and it dries quickly. So this was just to give it a little bit of interest. Not too worried about it's making some of the ink of the pattern run a little bit, but that's fine. Oh yeah, should have that pretty well sealed on now. Okay. Just going to quickly dry that off. Okay. Now I'm going to have a start at drawing out my face. I'm just going to start with a normal 2B pencil. I'm going to draw a rough oval. Okay, and then my guideline roughly in the middle. Just going to draw my pupils in, and you'll note that there's not a full circle, and then a little bit of the iris, just a little moon shape to give the impression. Okay, we're gonna give a little shadow over the top of that eyelid. That's the natural shadow from the eyelashes, and then a broken line to represent the eyelid, and a single line at this time just for the eyebrows, and then roughly halfway down we're going to do a little circle with our nostrils and maybe a little bit of a line there. And our face starts to take some shape. Okay. Okay, I'm going just go in with a little bit of paint and rubber. We're going to rub out some of that side of her face. And we're going to rub out some of the top. Okay. There we go. Just get rid of some of my guidelines there. They've served their purpose. So I've got a couple of colours. I think I might use, what shall I use today? Bear with. So I've got my watercolour set today. I'll do something different. This is a Rowney set. And I'm going to start by just getting some water to just juice them up a bit. So we're going to leave some on just to start getting some colour. Take a little while. Okay. So I'm going to go in with a very loose watercolour, trying to put some of the highlights in, some of the shadows in the places that we know they're going to be. Okay, so the eyelid, some definition under the eye, some here to show the shadow of the nose, around the nose, just underneath, some shadow to the chin. There will be some where the neck is too. I'm adding lots of water because I just really want to give the need for it to be very watery. I like the idea of it running a bit. It's leaving those kind of tea stainedy kind of marks as it dries. I like that. So we'll put some in her hair and her forehead. Just tipping the page up slightly just to, again, encourage that sort of running motion that I'm looking for. And if it goes on too dark, that's a little bit too dark, I'm just going to use a bit of blue cloth just to dampen it back. So that's fine. Okay, this is looking nice and vintagey. I'm going to warm up a little bit of red to mix in with that rusty colour I've got. I might go for some colour in her lips. And I'm going to mimic some of that colour in the shadows. Okay. I don't really know what we're doing with hair yet, but by creating these kind of drippy paths with the water, the paint that I drop at the top is able to just follow that track, do you see? And that will go as far as I want it to go, depending on the track that I leave. So let's drip it. I'm going to encourage some drips. I'm liking the drips. Okay, I've literally only used 2 colours at this point. We're going to keep the use of colours to an absolute minimum. I want this to be a kind of mixed media on a budget, so I have just used some normal pencils. This is just a pattern that I've literally picked up from the charity shop. It was 50p. Obviously it doesn't matter what the pattern is of. It's just to give some texture. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is quickly dry that off, and then we're going to go back in with some more pencil to get some drawing back into it. Okay, now I'm going to use an 8B pencil, which is much softer and darker, and I'm going to go in and darken up some of my lines, and I'm deliberately not going to sort of do solid lines all the way around. I want to kind of leave it looking sketchy. So, but I'm just emphasizing the darkness, and I'm using the side of the pencil to do some more of the natural shading that we've started. It can go in with the paint. Okay. Get some of the shadow in the eye. And I'm just going to use the side of the pencil to start filling in some of that iris. Okay. So we can give some impression of hair in a very squiggly way. Okay, now I'm going to go in with my Stabilo. Now Stabilo is even blacker than the 8B, and it also activates with water. So some of this I'm going to be activating and some of it not. But we are going to be using it just to up and up the popping of those features. But we can use the Stabilo to our advantage in the suggestion of hair, because once we activate this it will become very washy. Okay, so we'll do an impression of a neck, and I'm just going to show you what happens when we get some water on this. We get this gorgeous kind of ink-like. And again, I want a bit of running, not too much, but how gorgeous is that? All that lovely having a moment, guys, having a moment. I love it. So I'm obviously being a bit more careful around the edge because I don't want it splattering all down her face. But we can control the movement of the ink by the water, the path that we create with the brush, with the water. And there she goes. So she needs more around her face, and I'm gonna, we can always go in and add more after as well, so it's easier to add than to take away. Okay, let's get a bit going in the mouth. Top lip is usually darker. So being very less is more on the main features, and we're going to blot out using, because we don't want her main features to be running. That wouldn't look too special. But if we don't get them at least on some level as dark as some of the outside, they'll end up losing their poppiness. So I'm using quite a small brush here so that I can maintain the detail. And you can go back into other areas to pick up some of the ink to paint with, like so. So, okay. And obviously blotting. Really liking that. I'm going to go back in with a little bit more of the colour now, just to add some interest. I want the drips, so we've got to load it up and tip it up. Okay, I don't know what we're going to put in our hair yet up there, but I think we'll find something. See, I'm still able to reactivate the Stabilo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry that off so that we can go back in with some more Stabilo. Okay, so more of my Stabilo. I'm just going to give it a quick sharpen. There we go. Back in once again on these eyes. Eyes are the windows of the soul, right? So we want them to look special. Yeah. No, I'm not going to go overboard with eyelashes today. If you wanted to make her more whimsical, you could give her great enormous eyelashes. Just going to give the slight impression. I'm going to add just a fraction of shading. I think we need a bit more shading on the side here. That shadow, just want to keep it looking quite sketchy. So the hard line shouldn't be all the way around the face. You know, we can pick it up in places. So let's leave some of these sketchy lines in. So it's to me like she's got some kind of hat on, is the impression from this pattern. Maybe we could use that to our advantage. Okay. I like these sort of random scribbly marks, and if you hold the pencil quite high up, you've got less control, so you've got more chance of sort of having that loose sketchy feeling about your piece. Yeah, quite liking that. Okay, so I'm just going to add little bits of water. Let's see, because again, I don't want to activate all of the pencil. I want there to be the contrast in the different tones of black. determined to make my eyes pop. And there she is. See, that's instantly fixed. It was a bit too blurry. There. I don't want to go too crazy with her. I want to leave less is more. Okay. Right, one more just with the hairdryer. Just that little dip there helps mature. And I think we probably just need a little suggestion of cheekbone with the watercolour there. Colour works really well with the paper. Choice of sewing pattern, that sort of browny colour. What I really like about watercolours is that you can go over, you can let it dry and then go back in and you kind of get these very cool tide marks of the layers. So you have to really make sure that in between the layers, your layers are dry. Otherwise they just swim into each other and become muddy. Okay, I think we're just about ready to put something in the other places. I've bought these mandala stencils. It was a pack in Hobbycraft actually, and I bought them quite a long time ago, and they're actually paper, not whatever the stuff is normally. And so I'm going to put this stencil on here, but obviously if you use wet paint, the paper's not that strong. So I've got a couple of ink stamps, and these colours are going to go quite well. Hi Fiona. And I've got myself a couple of sponges. So let me see if we can move over a bit. See if am I going in the right direction? It's always difficult to tell. I think I am. So it's a bit difficult to keep it in place, so I'm going to have to sort of hold it and be fiddled. So this is the first thing that we're going to do. So I'm going to use my sponge, because obviously if I use the stamp like that, all it's going to do is go on the outside of the card, because it's going to go on the highest point. So that's why I need the sponge. So I'm going to, and ink is actually a very cool product to be using for stamping, because you don't get the bleed through that you do with paint, and if you use StazOn, it just instantly kind of, it doesn't smudge, and you can do some blending at the same time. We're going to be doing some blending, so I'm going to get some of the brown. Like so. Now obviously you can use exactly the same technique on your furniture. I like the blending of the colours so that it's not all uniformed. I did all of this, I'm mixing my sponges up now. So I'm going quite heavy-handed with the red at the moment, because the brown covers up the red quite well. Okay, we are nearly round. I kind of think it's time. Stencils have become a bit old play, because we've got all these new transfers in, we've got mouldings, we've got all sorts of other things that make stencils feel a bit yesterday's toy. But I don't think so. I think there's a big place for stencils, both in raised stenciling. We've just got to up our game on how we do them, and not just do the straightforward one colour job. We can layer stencils, we can blend stencils, we can do lots of things with stencils that we can't do with mouldings. They have their place. So I'm thinking that's going to look pretty lovely. Okay, so let's do the grand reveal. So there she is. I'm liking that. Now I'm not finished with that yet, but we're going to go on and do some bits here as well. So this came out of the same set, and I actually cut it out. This is ink, and this, because it stays on, it doesn't smudge, and I got it on Amazon. So I thought I'd build up this. This is actually pattern paper, sewing dress pattern paper underneath, and it kind of naturally brought these lines, which made her look a little bit like she had a hat on, I thought. So I thought I would initially do the same style with using the ink. Got to be careful not to go off the edge where I've cut it quite tight to the stencil, because that's what I did on my trial, went right over the edge. Okay. I might just put a little bit of brown, just a little, around the centre. There we go. So let's try that one. And the two-tone works really well. And I'm going to do one, try one as best I can off centre there with the crease of the book. So this is going to be a predominantly brown one. I might do the reverse by putting a little bit of red in, just a little around the middle. Okay, so she's looking quite cool now. Now the last thing I'm going to do, well not the last thing actually, we're going to do a bit more over here, but I'm going to show you another thing that you can do with the, and it's going to look quite cool there, is use some embossing powder. Now I think if any of you follow Fiona, most of you do, she'll have shown you this at some point. Get these little heated up embossing powders and you get some clear, a clear pad, embossing stamp pad, so it looks clear. So I've got a brand new bit of sponge, so it's only going to just sort of taint it a little bit. Now I don't really want to put it bang smack in the middle, it'll look too obvious. So I'm going to put it just a little bit off centre. Okay, now I'm loading up the clear pad, which is quite difficult to see if you're actually achieving anything because it's clear, but it does sort of slightly yellow. So I'm going to really give it a good coating. Okay. Okay. Right, that should do it. So now we take it off and there's not much to see. But what I'm going to do now is, if I can find myself a little bit, here we are. I'm going to put a little bit of paper there, just so as we don't get the mess everywhere. And I'm going to tip this powder quite generously all over the area. Now it might be hard to see on camera, but I can see where the stamp is. So I can make sure it's all covered. So there we are, that's all we need to do. And then I need to pull off the excess, which is easier said than done. So I'm just going to tip it onto the paper like that. And now you can start to see it formed. I'm just going to get rid of the bulk of that before. What I'm going to do is just tap it a bit. And my cards are popping out. That's just to get rid of any of the loose stuff. There's no need to waste any of this stuff. It goes a long way. I've had these pots for a long time. You can even give it a little blow, like so. And then you use a heat gun, not a hairdryer, it has to be a heat gun. And you apply the heat quite evenly. It won't take long, and hopefully you can see. I'll hold it up a little bit closer so that you can hopefully see the change. Like magic, it turns into a raised gold stencil. It's embossed, and I just think that is stunning. It makes me very tempted. I'm going to put a bit of one over here in exactly the same way. So I'm going to go again. I'm going to find my clear one, and I'm only going to do half of one in the centre. But it's not really stick out raised, so you could easily do this on bits of furniture, and you can get different coloured embossing powders. So I could have done that half silver, half gold, for example. It depends where you pour it. I like the crossover. And I have from day one of sort of doing the furniture between crafts and, you know, the skills that I learned as a crafter, moving it on to painting. It's what made the furniture more unique, by using that knowledge, those tools. So here we go. So there's my little, I'm just going to tip that off. There we go. Just going to give it a quick blow. Make sure you put your lid back on before you get any heat going, because it blows everywhere. And keep your pad closed to stop the ink drying up. There we have it, matching the other side. Some gold. Now, again, I think I'm about not leaving it at that. I want to, you could leave it at that. It's got a really nice blend in it, but I'm going to use my Stabilo, and you know that I use this a lot in my artwork, and I used it a lot in her face to get this graduating ink, but I'm going to use it to emphasize some of my stencil, and I'm going to wet my finger and we're going to smudge it a little bit. So again, we sort of get another dimension to our stenciling. And I'm tending to choose the areas around that are just a little bit darker than the bright red. So I'm kind of using it like a shadow, if you like, in some of the areas. I've even on her face, I've deliberately not sort of gone round everything. I know I'm an outliner, guys. I know I'm an outliner. Can't help myself. But look at that. I'm just wetting my finger. I'm a bit scared now. Just a little bit. Because this is what can happen. But because the rest of the page is like this, I knew this would happen. You can do this with a brush to make it more careful, or you can expect this, or you can blot it. But I kind of wanted this smudgy. It suits the journal. It might not suit your furniture. I get that. Gives it a real nice, I really like that. So let's see, can you see all the picture, all of it together? I don't know if it needs anything else at all really, because I think it's all getting a bit too much if I did any more. Do something there or not? Probably not. I'll just add a few bits in here. So, very simple, but two things that you get to do with stenciling. So some blending using sponges and inks, some outlining, whether you want it or not, you don't have to. And then the embossing ink, you know, and they do kind of all work together. Now, as you can see, when I'm doing the stabilo with the paintbrush, I can bring back some of the control, and that's what that will do on her hair as well. So the last thing I was just regards this page, because she's up and ready to go, is getting some of that brown around the edge and probably a little bit of red too. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you have a go.